This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenawalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. I'm joined as usual by my colleague and co-host Maura Donnelly. Hi, Maura.
Hello, Charlie.
We had been talking about the presidential elections and the general elections in the Commonwealth the last time, and I guess we didn't quite get to finish, did we?
No, we did not. We have a plethora of things to discuss today.
Yes, we certainly do, and we're lucky enough to have our featured guest from our last show, Brad Bumsted, who's the Bureau Chief for the Caucus, back with us to continue to analyze these elections and have our viewers better understand them. Brad, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate it.
Okay, Maura, do you want to start out?
Sure. Brad, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
We discussed, we really covered the presidential race in detail last time you were here. And we had some really pretty interesting races going on here in Pennsylvania, especially in our row offices, the Auditor General, Attorney General, and Treasurer. So why don't you give us your perspective on all three of those races and how they went and what we can expect going forward with those row offices.
Sure thing. The marquee race in this was the Attorney General. That's the highest profile position here. And of course, the incumbent Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, is widely expected to be not only a candidate for governor in 2022, but a likely Democratic nominee. You know, he's got a good shot at that. Anyway, it was somewhat of a surprise Wednesday morning when I got up. I'd stayed up pretty late, but I look at the numbers Wednesday morning, and Heather Heidelbaugh, Republican trial lawyer from Pittsburgh, is leading Shapiro by a significant margin. So it must be wrong. It can't be right. No slight to Heather. She was a very good candidate, and she's an incredibly good lawyer. Maybe overqualified to be Attorney General, but well, she's been a trial lawyer for 30 years. But and then also looked at it, and Joe Torsella, the incumbent Democratic treasurer, is also losing by close to a similar margin that Shapiro was. And his opponent is totally unknown, Stacey Garrity. I had never heard of her before this. And she's beating Torsella, and Heather is beating Josh. And I thought there must be something up. Well, it was. So what it was that the mail-in votes in some areas were held to the end. In some counties, they did them up front, so you knew right off. And those were mostly Democratic votes because the Democrats encourage people to do mail-in. So you have all this mail-in vote, and tons of it, I think it was 1.4 million votes, were still uncounted on Wednesday, the day after the election. So they started counting those, and as the count came in, Shapiro's numbers started rising, Torsella's did. But even by the end of the day, Wednesday, Garrity and Heidelbaugh were still leading in the race. It looked like there was a shot at it. But as time wore on, by the time you get into Thursday, Shapiro had taken the lead rather in the AG's race, and eventually did win by about 4 points, 4.5 maybe. Torsella, I don't know that the race has been called yet, but he's still trailing Stacey Garrity. I don't know if AP's called it, but he doesn't look favored to win this at this point, and he would be considered quite a surprise in this election, given that he was rumored to be a U.S. Senate candidate or something else, but it doesn't look like he's going to pull it out. Auditor General, you have a Republican, the Dauphin County Controller, Tim DeFore, defeating Nina Ahmad, who was a former deputy mayor of Philadelphia, a scientist most of her life. She now is involved in politics, but she had spent a lot more money. Neither of them held office, so it wasn't like you had incumbents at risk of losing, but DeFore won that race. And he's an unknown, but he has a lot of experience as an auditor for the Attorney General's office, the Inspector General's office, and Dauphin County. So
the Republican Party was very eager to welcome him. He's an African American. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so either way, you would have had a person of color in that race. Ahmad is from, I don't want to get this wrong, but anyway, maybe Bangladesh. But she came here at a young age and is a very smart person. She ran for lieutenant governor. Watched her in a debate, thought she was really good. And I believe she ran for Congress one time. But DeFore definitely has some support, and people like him in the Republican Party. And the interesting thing is he'll now be the watchdog role for a Democratic governor, Tom Wolf, in his final 2 years. And you know that when you get someone of the opposing party as the watchdog, either Auditor General or Attorney General, they tend to be a little more aggressive in their investigations. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's just natural. It's human nature to maybe dig in a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Any other interesting races other than the row offices that you found?
Well, yeah, the 10th congressional district race with Congressman Scott Perry, a 4-star general, retired. One-star general. He was a brigadier general, and Eugene DePasquale, the term-limited Auditor General of Pennsylvania and former state House member. We're in a real contest here with TV ads that were just, you couldn't get a program on TV without seeing maybe 2 of each of their ads.
Yes.
They were brutal. They were hard-hitting ads. And I figured it was about an even race maybe, because DePasquale has, as a Democrat, has the city of Harrisburg and the city of York as a base to get votes out of. And Scott Perry, much like Trump, who he's a big supporter of, would be able to rack up huge numbers in the rural parts of York and Dauphin County and and Cumberland. So, but as it turned out, it was a fairly significant lead and win for Perry. I don't know if it turned out to be 8 or 10 points. I'd have to look at the numbers again, but it wasn't even close in the end. It was called fairly early. And
Brad DePasquale, many people thought him as a individual who would be a great candidate for higher office as well, whether it be governor or U.S. Senate as well. Was it a good idea for him to take this detour and run in this congressional race?
I don't know. Hindsight's 20/20, but I can't imagine if he won that race, where he would have been eager to abandon the seat that he just won to take a risky venture and run for governor or U.S. Senate. And knowing Eugene, he's not pushed down by any of these types of things. He may run anyway now. I would say he's definitely quite blemished as a result of the beating he took from Perry's ad people. But I would not be surprised to see him run for higher office in 2 years. What do you think, Mara?
Well, I actually always thought that the 2 people who would run against each other for governor would be DePasquale and Shapiro on the Democratic ticket. And honestly, this is the cynic in me thinking the Democratic Party said, okay, you 2 go your separate ways and do something instead of going against each other. So now I'm not really sure what might happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they both do actually run for governor.
Right. Shapiro may have wound up with a credible challenger on his hands from that, but the real traffic cop on all of that is Governor Wolf, because Shapiro, he already called Shapiro maybe last year at an election in a restaurant. There's my guy, he referred to, that's my guy. So if you don't get any help from the sitting governor, and all the help goes to Shapiro, even though they don't endorse in primaries, it would be sort of tough if you're cut off from his fundraising. But who knows?
He also has to get over our to flip Republican Democratic every 8 years, with a few exceptions. There have been a few exceptions. So Shapiro would have his work cut out for him. But I don't know of anybody. I mean, who would run on the Republican side? Any rumors?
Oh, there are a ton of rumors, and there are probably 7 or 8 people whose names are being bandied about, but none of them have the name recognition or experience that Shapiro and DePasquale do, and for that matter, Fetterman, who's likely to be a Senate candidate, but he wouldn't have to be. He could decide he's running for governor.
Well,
But
Brad, in the last minute, could you tell our viewers what happened with the balance of power in the State House and the State Senate? Did it change or did it stay the same?
it stayed the same, and the Senate Republicans appear to have picked up 1 seat.
Okay. Well, I think Mara, we're fortunate to have Brad to talk about these issues with. Brad, we can't thank you enough for joining us, and we'll look forward to following these new people in office, and look forward to having you back real soon. Okay.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
We'll be back with the second segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Behind the Headlines is also brought to you by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. The Pennsylvania Chamber serves as the frontline advocate for business on Pennsylvania's Capitol Hill by influencing the legislative, regulatory, and judicial branches of state government. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Welcome back to Behind the Headlines. In this segment, Mara and I are joined by Bob Latham. Bob is the Executive Vice President of the Associated PA Constructors. Bob, welcome back to the show.
Mara and Charlie, great to be with you again.
Mara, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think one of the issues that all of our audience is interested in is how are our roads getting built during this time of COVID? How has it affected the highway industry?
Well, the highway industry was deeply affected when the whole COVID situation started back in March and April. In fact, Pennsylvania was one of only a couple of states to stop highway construction projects or shut them down like other businesses. Many other states looked at it as an opportunity when people were not driving and actually accelerated projects. But for a period of a few weeks, Governor Wolf shut us down. And that, of course, was, in our minds, very detrimental to the industry and particularly to employment and some of the people working in the industry. So it was a bit of a problem. It was a bit of a concern. We will say that after a short period of time, the governor gave PennDOT to go ahead to start to reopen projects. And I think that was mainly as a result of what we were able to do working with the Department of Transportation in showing that we could work safely and keep not only motorists safe during the pandemic, but also our people. So we were able to restart those projects in May and get things moving along.
Well, how did COVID impact highway construction funding, Bob?
Well, on the funding side, you can imagine when there are, well, let's back up a little bit, Charlie. So highways are funded primarily from the fuel tax that are paid by motorists and when they consume gasoline, I guess, if you will, or diesel fuel when they're driving.
And that's way down.
So, and also there was in addition to the fuel tax, registration fees and other things. So the revenues into the Pennsylvania's Transportation Fund, which is also known as the Motor License Fund, were down considerably in April and May, off about $160 million.
Wow.
Now, the problem that we're having is there's a controversy, if you will, between the budget office within the administration and the independent fiscal office as to really how deeply we are impacted by the COVID drop-off. So you had a 6-week period where not many people were driving. Then in June, driving picked up again, and the revenues started to come back into the transportation fund. We're seeing a differential of about $100 million between 2019 and 2020 calendar year, whereas the projections from the budget office are much greater than that. We're still trying to get a reconciliation of that. We've been talking to members of the General Assembly, particularly the Appropriations Committee. We've been talking to the administration. We just don't seem to understand why they continue to project a deficit, a 2-year deficit in the neighborhood of $800 million. Consequently, future construction projects that have been put out to bid have been reduced, and that's a major concern to us as an industry. That's our industry market, but it should also be of concern to motorists and viewers for your program here today, because that means much needed road projects aren't getting done, and we're trying to figure out why not and how we can get things back on track.
What are some of the safety protocols that the industry has had to put into place, and for the individuals who are working?
Well, certainly we have been following the health department's protocol for businesses, and actually the Department of Health also had a specific protocol for the construction industry. That was, there's road construction, outdoor construction, then there's building construction. There's all different kinds, but the health department put out a kind of a blanket directive for health and safety procedures. The first thing we did was we instituted the masking policy and social distancing, and these were things that had to be worked out because, well, in the first part, we're here in the fall, but remember, this was all going on in the summertime, and when you have a paving project, the asphalt that comes out of the paver comes out at about 250 degrees. And when it's 95 degrees outside to begin with, and you got 250 degree asphalt, it makes it difficult to have your face covered up, in terms of your ability to breathe. So we had to work with the department and the health department on some relaxation in terms of if there were safety or health impacts there. Originally, everybody was supposed to have a mask on no matter what. So now I've got a mask on while I'm by myself operating a piece of equipment. That didn't seem to make much sense either. So fortunately, we worked with the department, worked with the health department to give some relaxation to that. But understanding that in all other instances where there was close quarters, where you couldn't social distance, we have a very extensive mask policy, cleaning of office trailers, cleaning out on the projects, signs, awareness signs. You probably have seen if you've driven through some projects, signs that say COVID safety procedures in place. We are alerting the motoring public to that effect. And so we have taken great precautions to make sure that our employees are safe, and any contact they might have with the motoring public, people are safe as a result of what we do.
Well, in this period of time, Bob, now that we've had the election, in this post-election period, what are some of the potential transportation issues at the state level that your organization will be concerned with?
Something that's the issue of vehicle taxation fairness, I guess, if you will, has been around for quite some time. It predated COVID and is here to stay. And that is for your viewers who drive an automobile that is fueled by gasoline. They are paying for the use of the road, for road improvements, for road safety. They're paying at the pump in the form of the fuel tax, the oil company franchise tax, which when you fill up, a certain amount of the fuel that you fill up is taxed. Now, those folks who have been able to purchase a fully electric vehicle supposedly are paying some kind of charge, but not really. So there has been legislation introduced that would basically calculate the equivalency of the average motorist pays about $250 a year in gas taxes throughout the entire year. So the proposal would be to increase the registration fee for fully electric vehicles, not even up to that level. It's more like $150 to $175. We think that proposal has an opportunity here in the fall. There's talk about it. There are a number of bills that impact electric vehicles in terms of providing charging locations, in terms of increasing the allowable weight limits on trucks. Believe it or not, there are now semi trucks that are fully electric that can haul up to 80,000 pounds now. So this is an industry that's growing. This is something that's coming. And this legislation will basically back and fill the ability for those vehicles to pay their fair share of road costs.
So we're getting close to the time of year when the governor will give his mid-year report on the budget. And so we've got a lot of, it'll be interesting to see how it comes out, given what the impact COVID probably has had on the budget this year. But what kind of issues are you going to be working on at this time heading into the new budget season?
Well, certainly, Maura, we've had an opportunity over the years on this show to talk about the impact of the state police budget on the motor license fund or the transportation fund, and
it hasn't been fixed yet.
I couldn't come on without discussing, our old friend, as we call it, that issue. The general fund, from what I understand, has about I don't know, who did you talk to, a $4 to $6 billion deficit. Something's going to have to happen there. Our advocacy basically says, if you got to fill a $6 billion hole, what's another $700 million? Let's move. Again, going back to the point that your viewers and motorists who are filling up at the pump understand that we have the second highest gas tax in the country, and that is about 51 cents per gallon. 12 cents of that isn't going into road improvements. It's essentially going to prop up the general fund, under the guise, if you will, of paying for the state police budget. So we would like to see that dealt with once and for all. The other thing is, one of the phenomena from the COVID has been a huge increase in online buying and remote purchasing. You're seeing bricks and mortar stores go out of business left and right. It's really sad in some cases, but it's a phenomenon of the delivery the distribution economy. You cannot drive a interstate in Pennsylvania, particularly here in central Pennsylvania, without going past 1, 2, 3, million square foot warehouses right next to interstates, and they are there to accommodate truck travel and delivery. By and large, those distribution centers and all that additional truck traffic are not paying for the additional wear and tear and stress on our state's interstates. So we're looking very carefully at maybe some mechanisms in which some of the stress that industry is putting on roads can help to alleviate the situation with our interstate highways. The Department of Transportation has had to shift some $400 to $500 million in monies available to local projects over to the interstate highway system as a result of directives coming from the federal government, and maybe that there can be some value capture from the distribution industry.
So the Department of Transportation has said that there is I believe a $9.3 billion deficit in highway funding right now. It sounds like you've just outlined why that is.
Yeah, that's and again, we have to understand that PennDOT covers some 40,000 miles of roadway, and local governments have another 70,000. So that's a lot of miles of pavement that have to be maintained. We not only have to maintain the physical condition of it, we also have to plow the snow and and keep the roads open in the wintertime. So that's a situation. We have 25,000 bridges in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania simply because of our topography and geography, which is as high as any state in the country. And let's face it, we're an old state. A lot of those bridges are 50 years old or more. Now, when we passed the Transportation Funding Bill in 2013, known as Act 89, we made a huge impact, positive impact on the safety of those bridges. We had, at the time, we had 6,000 of the 25,000 that were in bad shape, and we fixed more than half of them. So we're down to like 3,000 bridges now, as opposed to 6. So that's a lot of bridge work, a lot of construction, a lot of rehabilitation, and a lot of safety for motorists traveling around the Commonwealth. But we certainly have a lot more to do.
Okay, but we certainly have a lot more. We have a lot more to talk about. We have a lot more to talk about too, Bob, but we've run out of time. So Maura and I want to thank you so much for being with us again and our audience. And we want to ask you to tune in again with us next week for another episode of Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.